Of course, we had a typical childhood of that period, the 20s and the 30s, living in a small town of Mendon, plowing and picking cotton and hoeing and chopping cotton. And of course, George was older, and of course, always felt that he was in control. And of course, we, as youngsters, fought a lot, and of course, our parents were pretty smart. They bought us some boxing gloves, and he did pretty well until my arms got longer, and then everything was peaceful. He was in an official position in the student body of our high school. He was, of his class, he was in charge of creating the fund.
I made real good grades, and every now and then, looking back, I noticed that on conduct I slipped a little.
I've known George Nelson since he and I both were 13 years old. We met at the Youth Assembly at Mansfield, Louisiana. In those days, the photographer had a camera that would take a panoramic shot. Well, George, even then, was so ambitious until he and a couple other fellows, they got on one end where the photographer was starting. And as soon as he got past there, they ran around behind the group and got on the other end of the picture. And they were in both exposures. And that's typical of George.
Nell and I got married in 1945. When the children were growing up, George and Carolyn, I'd say, I called your mother, and I said, let's get married. And she said, okay, who's calling?
George is a very kind man. There's nothing he wouldn't do for me, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. And we've gone through life the last 50 years doing nothing for each other.
George is always there. He's there, and he's there on time, except for church. And in church, he always comes in late, just after the offering. Last Sunday, he had on a new Panama hat. He's on the man's favorite with the Panama hat. And it was new, and I was walking out of our studio with him, and he reached up and put on that Panama and pulled it down and said, aren't you jealous?
His trademark, of course, is that hat pulled down slightly at a rakish air on the right-hand side. The other trademark that my friend George has is that after every meeting, you can expect to receive 3 or 4 well-done photographs in the mail with some sterling sage bit of advice on them, and he always manages to get my wrong side.
People have ways of keeping in touch. His is take your picture. I kid him a little bit and tell him that he sends a fellow his picture. Not tell the fellow he's remember him. He's telling the guy, you remember me.
But I didn't have the foggiest idea how to sell insurance. And one of the representatives of one of the mining companies came to our office one day, and since I was about the only person, they didn't care what he did all day, I took this fellow on, and I told him, I said, man, I've got to learn how to do something around here that's worthwhile because I'm backing up to get my check every month. Mr. Hunt often came to Shreveport to the fair. He loved the fair. I already had the account, but he was standing in front of the Waldorf Astoria one day, and I had not met him. So I walked over to him, Nell and I were there, and introduced myself. And an interesting thing happened. About a week later, my phone rang, and it was on a Sunday night, and the operator said, "Is this the George Nelson that's a close friend of H.L. Hunt?" Well, it took me a second to declare, yes, I was indeed the George Nelson who was a close friend of H.L. Hunt.
General Schwarzkopf says, if you're given command, take charge. George took charge out there, but his leadership is in a nice, smooth, kind way. Before you know it, he's got you, he's delegated all these jobs to you, you know.
The British call, as their description of the most first-class leadership, the Nelson touch. The Nelson touch. Well, Centenary has been blessed by this Nelson touch for over 30 years.
Under his leadership, Centenary had become one of the strongest schools and best bargain for education in the nation.
I didn't know, as we do now, all of us, deep down, what a Southern gentleman is. Now I know, and my impression began, I think, that day. This man is a Southern gentleman, a true Southern gentleman. Extraordinary and deeply rooted courtesy. It's not superficial. This is a kindly man, a generous man in terms of feelings, a just man, has a sense of right and wrong.
George Nelson is the only person I've ever known in my life who gave the kind of attention to his family, to his mother, that we all eventually wish we had got done. I think I'm right in saying that for many years before his mother died, he went every Sunday afternoon and stayed with her. And even after she probably understood that he was there, I knew he was there, sitting by his mother's side.
I can't remember one occasion in 14 years when he put me off, or certainly never turned me down. Every phone call I made to him, every emergency visit, every meeting, every crisis, every ulcer, any advice, any support, always, of course, Don, here I am.
George Nelson, you're a very special human being and a true mentor and friend to me. And Shreveport, Louisiana has been fortunate to have your leadership and is fortunate to continue to have your leadership in this community.
He's a fine gentleman, and I can't say enough good things about him. Shreveport is honored to have George Nelson here as one of its premier citizens, civic-wise and every other way. And best of all, I regard him as my friend.
You know, with Rick, we don't have many real friends in life. Most of us can count them on one hand. George is one of those friends.
In my career, I have been a Royal Navy officer, pastor, and Centenary president. Therefore, I have worked for the monarch, the Almighty, and George Nelson in that ascending order. And there's enough truth in that to make it more than just a joke. God bless you, George.